This is it. You've reached the Man to Men Weekend podcast, episode 5, and Screenaholics, episode 11. And my name is Mark Dittmer. I'm your host. And our guest this episode is Justin Cimino. Mr. Cimino is the third Man to Men Weekend manager, facilitator that has been on the podcast. Scott Karstens and Mitch DeArmond are the co-founders of the Man to Men Weekend, and Mr. Cimino did the first Man to Men Weekend as a participant, as I did, and then immediately became the production team manager, which is the leader of all the volunteers at the weekend, and then was promoted to being a weekend manager alongside Mr. Karstens, who during the first weekend or the first couple weekends held the title of weekend manager, along with co-facilitator, as we discuss in this podcast. But all these titles aside, these are men who put a lot of thought into serving and helping other men. And to that I say thumbs up, which is what, for some reason, if you're watching the audio, listening to the audio, you wouldn't know this, but if you're watching the video, some random thumbs up emoji is popping onto the screen, and I don't know what program it's from or why that's happening. But at least it's not saying thumbs down. I don't. What's going on? I don't know. I haven't even uploaded this yet, but I'm noticing it pop up. I noticed it as I was going over the recording of the interview with Mr. Cimino. So, as far as technical glitches go, I mean, it could be a lot worse. Definitely enjoying learning about some of the technical aspects of podcasting. Anyway, recording this in January of 2024. The next Man to Men Weekend is March 15th, 2024. And we talk a lot about men's weekends, and we talk about the Sterling Men's Weekend as well, which is happening March 1st, 2024. So, what's with all this with men's weekends? Well, I don't know. If you've been listening to me for any length of time, you've already heard about it. And if you're a student of history, you know that, and maybe anthropology, you know that primitive societies and tribes, men have an initiation as part of the society where young men are taken away from the mother, and whether or not, or however the mother is involved or the father is involved or whoever is involved, men. It helps us to have some kind of encouragement towards becoming an adult. And if you've read any Robert Bly, perhaps The Sibling Society, he talks a lot about how resistant modern men and women are to just growing up and being adults. And our cultural conversation has gotten increasingly immature, which Mr. DeArmond talked about in our last episode, or episode 9. Here Justin Cimino talks quite a bit about just what the Man to Men Weekend is. You can sort of see how he applies it in his life, and maybe through that you can see it how I might apply it in mine. And Justin is, I'm happy to call him a friend, and I think, if you can see, just it comes through in the podcast that he's the kind of guy you would want to have as a friend. And and that's one of the things the weekend has done for me, is put me around a lot of men who I'm lucky to call friends, and hope to introduce you to more of them here in future episodes, or come on out and meet them yourself at the next Man to Men Weekend. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe, and have your friends do the same. I know I'm helping Screenaholics, but I've just touched a small percent of the people in this country who are suffering from screenaholism, and I really feel that if we can put the word out there to all the others who are silently suffering, And if they can like and subscribe too, then we might really have something that will help us all overcome Screenahol, our addiction. Our addiction, as Norm Macdonald would say, to Screenahol. And again, thanks to Justin for Cimino for coming on the podcast, and everybody have a great day. Hope you're having a great 2024 so far. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Goodbye. Not goodbye. Rather, here he is, Justin Cimino. Okay, hey Justin, how's it going? Welcome. So tell me, you were telling me you had a situation with a transgender participant at the Man to Men weekend.
Hell of a way to start an interview, Mr. Dittmer. So, it wasn't really a situation. What it was we had a question brought to us, and the question was, if a person is transgender male, are they welcome to come to the weekend? So the weekend leaders and I got together, we discussed it, and the answer we came up with is we're not going to be checking pants at the door. So if a participant is a man, they're a man. If they want to come to the weekend and they're a man, they're welcome. There's a cabin for them, there's a bathroom for them, and that's that. Now, if a transgender person wants to come to the weekend and needs special, housing and bathrooms, and then it's something else, right? But if you're a man, you're a man, and it's not for, DeArmond or Karstens or myself as the weekend manager to decide you're a man or you're not a man, and that's way beyond us, and we welcome men, right? Straight men, gay men, fat men, skinny men, old men, right? It doesn't matter, It's about uniting the men.
So that's like I feel like it was out there. It's a weird interview starter, but it's I like how you tie it back to it seems like a good example of how like we come to the weekend maybe with whatever our issues are, but there's is that sort of the discipline that you have to have as running a weekend, is like, how do I take whatever's coming and make it into something that unites the men?
Something from my first weekend that I attended was June of 21, and it was Man to Men weekend. Mm-hmm. And Mr. Karstens brought to us, never again will you have a problem in your life, only situations. And it hit, right? It's like, no more problems. They're not for the men. Mm-hmm. Men take what's coming at them, assess, figure out what's going on. If they have the discipline to chill back and figure out, okay, what's the best action I could take here, and tying it to the other weekend, the Sterling Men's weekend, barrier, discover, dissolve, right? And it's no big deal.
Right. The purpose of the Sterling Men's weekend is to
engage in the process of locating the source of your power and discover and dissolve the barriers between you and manifesting that power so that you experience total freedom as only a man can. And with that freedom, be the man you always wanted to be.
Yeah.
Right? And then tying it to the man-to-men purpose to unite the men through initiation so that the responsibility men have for each other is realized. And I think that's where a lot of men have gotten lost, is we're in this together, and together we're better.
I wonder, that seems, I believe that. I believe that, but what does that mean? It seems it's so easy for some of our language to be how it is. It's like if you're praying and you say a prayer, but you've said it 100 times, so
sure,
you lose connection to it.
Yeah,
but you feel connected to it.
I do.
Yeah.
Right, and for me, it's a purpose in my life, right, and it's something that I go after. My friend Mr. Little brought it a really good way, and he said, think of it as like a teepee, right? All the poles come up and connect, and if you focus on the tip of the teepee, you know where you're going, right? And it's the same way with my purpose, right? I have a direction, I know where I'm going, so if I just stick with that purpose, I have a direction, right? And what it means to me for the men getting together is there's a lot of men that suffer from depression and all kinds of different mental ailments and addiction and everything else. And in my opinion, it's because they're alone and they isolate and they don't have someone that can have their front, right, and their back.
Which is backing up to the teepee is every man might have a different purpose. They're all going in different angles, but they lean up against each other and they can sort of support one another.
I wouldn't say that the men have different purposes. I just think they have a different way of getting to the purpose, right? And then the tip I would consider that to be the purpose, and we're all aiming for the same thing, right?
Okay.
We're all going to the same spot if we're aligned with the purpose.
Yeah. And then you also mentioned, you were talking about the dangers of isolating, and I wonder, like, how did you learn that the importance of not isolating? I mean, like, is that hit home to you? Do you kind of have I can't picture you isolating.
It's not me, right? I'm not an isolator. I love being around people, and I love, I'm kind of a chameleon. I can fit in with this crowd or that crowd and just make the best of it. But why I talk about it is because I've seen too many of men my age, men younger, like suffer and die because they're alone. And I can't tell you how many men I've lost in my life because, they don't know how to they can't accept that there's a community out there for them and that they don't have to be alone, right? And yeah.
I mean, I kind of want to call my own bullshit. Like, I could see you isolating, like everybody.
Sure.
But what I guess I'm just getting, I was fishing around for, like, do you have a time in your life when you were isolating, that kind of thing? But I understand that, like, it's more something that you've seen with other people.
Yeah.
But I guess what's interesting, the other thing that pops into my head is that if we're together, then we might have might work to have a purpose that is one purpose. Whereas if I'm isolating, my purpose might be just to aggrandize myself, or at least that might be my experience as far as, like, where my head goes, or where
Sure.
my head would be where I isolate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
But I mean, do you find that your purpose, because part of what we just sort of spoke out the purposes of these weekends,
Sure,
is, like, being purpose driven a new thing, or is it a thing that you feel like comes naturally? What's your sense of that in your life?
I would say that it comes natural, right? And it's become more clear since I did my men's weekend. But even before that, I was involved in other organizations where together we're better, right? And whether it be, youth sports or recovery rooms or, we're sitting at the Rip City Rider Clubhouse right now, right? And there's about 90 members, men and women, and our purpose is to support local 501c3s and to ride motorcycles and have fun. And there's plaques all over this room of different motorcycles we've given away, and like the Polyclass Foundation in Sonoma County, we've given over $100,000 to, right? So it's like, that's what I mean about being a chameleon, is like, I'm part of a motorcycle club, I'm part of Alcoholics Anonymous, I'm part of the Man to Men Weekend, I'm part of Quan Men's Division, and it's like, I have all these people in my life, which helps me move up the chart.
And that's like like having a higher purpose that affects more people.
That's right.
What's the Polyclass Foundation?
So Polyclass was a little girl in Petaluma, California, and I believe it was 1995. And a predator, Richard Allen Davis, who's on death row still, snuck into her room and stole her, and ended up killing her. And so what the Polyclass Foundation does now is I think it's over 10,000 kids that they've helped now. What they do is they go into local schools, they talk to kids about online safety and how to be safe online and not to get lured into a bad situation. Yeah. So I think they go to elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, and it's here in Sonoma County. So
Awesome. Can backing up again? So you're talking, we talked about you mentioned there's no problems, there's situations, and how that hit you at the weekend, and how it kind of helped you guys. It's a guiding thing that helps take situations that come into the weekend and help direct men toward uniting with their fellow men. Can you give other examples of the type of thing that goes on at the weekend, that like the kind of transformations that you might have seen or experienced?
I've seen a lot of things happen at the weekend, right? June 21 was the first man-to-men weekend.
Yeah.
And I knew I was going, and I enrolled my brother, Turner, to come. And
Mr. Jeffrey Turner.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And we're 10 years apart. And before the man-to-men weekend, Turner was a hermit. He stayed at home. He was on his computer playing his games with his 2 or 3 friends that he had, and he worked, and that was about it. He went through his weekend, went through his point program, and blossomed, right? Out of his shell, out there slaying it. And, he had a lot of fun for a while, and he, it broke him free of whatever that was holding him back. And he was having a lot of fun with different ladies and going out and going dancing. And from seeing a kid who, is like a son to me, it's my little brother, we're 10 years apart. And I've always looked after him, to watch him blossom from going to his men's weekend and, go out and have fun and have a social life, and to watch what it's done with his life. He's been in a relationship with his girlfriend, I believe 2 years now, 2.5 years, something like that. So, June of 21, kid's a hermit. October of 21, he's had some fun, and he met his girl, and she's a lovely lady, and they've been together since. And, they're having fun, and we'll see what happens with that relationship. But it's huge to see somebody that was in one spot to doing a lot. Mr. Adams, Hunter, same thing. Young man, son of Gary, right? At home, blah, blah, blah. He goes through his weekend, same thing. Blossoms with the ladies, out having fun. Kid got his motorcycle license, got a motorcycle, decided he wanted to do something with his life, went and got a Class A driver's license, is out making good money now, and driving a big rig truck, right? It's result of the men's weekend, holy shit. So young men. I've also seen some elder men that, going through a divorce, was a little lost, and he got away from the men. And he came back, and the man I'm thinking of joined us at a division away, a camping trip. And that was in April of 22, and in June 2023, he did his man-to-men weekend. And, he was a Sterling Men's graduate from 1999 and was part of his men's division for a long time, and then got away from it. And, he came back kind of broken, and then it snapped when he got back with the men. He's a good man. So,
with say your brother or maybe some of the other men you spoke about, but maybe just your brother, just to focus on one.
Sure.
Have you talked to him, or would you have a guess or a sense of was it also for him the situation idea, or was there anything else that really you think that, can you say what it was that might have happened for him? I mean, I guess only he could potentially, but you want to care to speculate, or?
You know what? I'd have to ask him.
Yeah,
I don't want to put words in the man's mouth.
Yeah.
But I know, watching it from the outside in, I'm not the only one that's noticed it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. What about for yourself? You've mentioned that also. Just following up, you said that you wanted to do you knew you were going to go.
Yeah.
How did you know you were going to go? Because this is the first, brand new thing. why would any, I think at the first, I think I was there too. I think we were asked very quickly, like, what the hell are you guys doing here? You paid $500? What'd you do that for? So what does that look like? Looking back, what are you doing?
So, Mr. DeArmond, right, was my sponsor to the weekend, both weekends. And I love DeArmond.
Yep.
Right? I mean, I love DeArmond really deeply. And I heard that him and Mr. Karstens were starting a weekend. And I was kind of sitting back waiting for, like, the invitation, right? And then finally I'm like, he brought it up to me, like, you going to the weekend? I'm like, of course I am. Right? So why? Because I trust and look up to DeArmond, my sponsor, right? And it wasn't a question for me. As soon as registration opened, I was signed up.
Right. How do you guys know each other?
We know each other from Alcoholics Anonymous.
Okay. Copy that. Yeah. And
there goes your anonymity,
I
Mr.
know.
DeArmond.
Like I meant to ask you about that before. Like, did you want to, how do you want to? And then I was like, oh yeah.
I'm proud of being an alcoholic.
Right.
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 And my life today, because of Alcoholics Anonymous, is amazing. Right.
Uh-huh.
I got sober August 23rd of 2013, and my life from then to now is amazing. And it's due to Alcoholics Anonymous. It's due to the men, but first and foremost, it's due to God.
Mm-hmm. Were you religious before you did AA? Like,
What's that? What
you mentioned? Due to God, did the spiritual part of AA like attract you from the beginning, or was it?
I've never had a God issue, right?
Okay.
Like, I know a lot of people in AA like shy away from the word God and they have a hard time with it. Not for me.
Yeah.
Right. And for me, it's like, why would you be afraid of God? He's loving and caring and all-knowing and, like, powerful, and, like, I don't have to be in control. And for a selfish, self-centered alcoholic, for myself, letting go of that stuff, and I'm not good at letting go. I'm a control freak. And, like, just knowing and going to the third step prayer of, like, I don't have to have this. I can give it to God. It's like,
I had a similar, like, I have a similar kind of outlook. I mean, I also kind of, although I would say it took me a little longer to. There was a time when I first walked into the rooms of 12-step rooms where I saw God on the wall, and I was like, well, I don't know about that. Like, I have negative associations with people around. But then a few years later, I'd read I had somebody recommended I read Eckhart Tolle, and then I was like, I was very willing by that time, like, to sort of. And for me, one way I describe it is just like having a positive outlook. Like, if the purpose, like, if the world was created by somebody, or if I can sort of sit back and realize, like, the world's been running, without my doing, all this much to hold it together, and if I can put some trust in the fact, like, in the whatever, created and maintained in a way, like the world, then so it's like it's just having a positive outlook, as opposed to, like, everything's going wrong, like we're all gonna die.
the sky is falling.
Yeah. So I mean, that's a little bit, but one question I would maybe that follows from that is, what do you think about the weekends, the spirituality vis-a-vis the weekends? Because in a way, they're very, like, people are asking, like, are they, is this religious? Or I'm like, no, it's not religious. So, like, but it's interesting because I think it's kind of spiritual, but we're not really talking about God typically at a weekend event.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not a religious event.
Yeah.
Right. But I think there's a spirit to it.
There's certainly, yeah.
Right. And, we joke about it, but Mitchell Karstens comes to the man-to-man weekend, and we call him the manager of the spirit of the weekend. And there's something very magical about that kid. Mm-hmm. And actually, he's not a kid, about that man.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's something happening. I'll give you an example. September 23, put on the last man-to-man weekend. And DeArmond calls me in the morning. He goes, it came to me. I go, what's that? He goes, we need to do something to unify the production team. I'm like, okay. He goes, you don't have to answer me right now, but we got to do something. All right. Not even 10 minutes later, Dittmer, Mr. Lee Howe calls me and he goes, Cimino, I got an idea. I don't want to make shit up without letting you know. But here's my idea. I'm going to bring my tub for my ice bath and bring some ice, and we'll have the production team get in the ice bath. And I started laughing. I go, whoa, what's going on here? Right? So I called DeArmond back. I said, I can't tell you what it is, but I figured it out. We're unifying one way or another. And every man on the production team got up on Saturday morning and 6 a.m. and jumped in an ice bath. And some of us stayed in a minute, some of us stayed in 3 minutes, and it was definitely something I'll never forget. Yeah.
Unifying for sure, and like the masculine. We talk about the masculine spirit a lot.
Sure.
And like seeing it in the fire, there's the fire, and it's the spirit, and it's been going for a long time without us, and then we get to, it's just cool to talk about in a way, yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, maybe it's coincidence, maybe it's a spirit working to make something happen.
Right.
I'm not going to get in the way of it or try to figure it out. But DeArmond calls, Lee Howe calls, we go with it, right? Carson's talk about it. When the spirit comes in, don't try to get in its way, right? So.
Yeah. So, I mean, and you did your weekend in 2021 of June, and then after, like, since then, though, were you PTM, like, were you the production team manager of the next weekend?
I was.
And what has that been like? Being on part of production, and the first, I guess you were, that lasted for probably about 3 weekends where you were just PTMing, or 2 or 3? Yeah,
right.
Okay.
So let's see here. Went to the June 21 weekend and left the weekend knowing I wanted more. Bird came out and talked about Quan Min's division and talked about a point program.
It was Brandon Bird. He was a man who was on production at that first weekend. Yeah.
That's correct. At the time, he was the division coordinator for Quan Min's division.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, we got something for you men, right? The weekend's only a short 3 days, but we got a 7-week program for you. And I came out, and Turner and myself and Adams and Gross and Payne and Ignacio Perez and Buddy Martin. We all came out and we did our point program together, and it's something you never forget. I'm probably dropping out a couple. Mr. Harrington. Sorry, Kev. You know what I mean? But so got through the point program, and I knew that I wanted to go back to the weekend, and I talked to DeArmond, and I told him I want to be, one of those black shirts, right? The men that were running the weekend and taking care of everything. And I didn't even realize at the time it was called production, right? And they said, all right, you can be on production. And DeArmond and Carson's talked. And we were out at Mr. Alan Hill's house for a division meeting. And Carson's and I had a conversation. And I told him, I want to be part of production. He goes, good, because you're going to be the production team manager. And I had no idea what that meant. And, Mr. Carson's has given me $1 million of lessons shoved up my ass a nickel at a time. And November 21, I PTM'd, April 22, and August 22, I believe. And then, August 22, Mr. Yankee took over. And then he was PTM for a couple weekends. And then we've been searching for a new PTM. And I've kind of been in between weekend manager and production team manager for the last couple weekends.
And weekend manager is were DeArmond and Carson's basically doing the weekend manager role before with the first few weekends?
They were. So the way the chain of command worked prior to me being put up to the weekend manager is DeArmond was technically weekend leader, and below him was Mr. Carson's as the weekend manager. However, Carson's was co-facilitating the weekend,
mm-hmm.
right? And then below that, PTM. Carson's and DeArmond were running the show.
Yeah. And I'm thinking, this might sound to people who aren't familiar like, oh, it's a lot of, whatever. But chain of command is probably a word that people know what that means. And then you mentioned that having lessons shoved up your ass a nickel at a time. And I was thinking that that's sort of like, I mean, I think that maybe that's how men unify. Like we like
Right.
chains of command and sort of we like knowing our role, or like a sort of a way of, is that what you've found? Would you say that you naturally fit into chains of command, or sort of it comes naturally to you?
It does, and I try to figure out how to get to the top of that chain,
Uh-huh,
right? and the lessons I learned is don't be selfish, right? It's easy for me to just go and make the name tags and get them done and blah blah blah, but if I have 10 men on my team below, or not below, 10 men that are serving with me and want something to do but can't do anything without being, this is what I need. If I'm taking care of those tasks, I'm not being fair to the 10 men that are volunteering, and I'm not giving them the maximum benefit of volunteering.
Yeah. It's an interesting, like, kind of the way that works is like the way we are, like we don't want to, we're not like if we're all in on the purpose, then we don't tend to be as lazy. Like we tend to be lazy in a lot of contexts, but if I'm on a production team, nobody on a production, I've almost never seen that on a production team where guys are, well, maybe I have, I don't know.
Yeah. If you have the right team behind you, then it's no problem, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And it needs to be led.
Yeah. I mean, and I guess that is like a type of unselfishness you can practice, of just to lead is almost kind of like a radical unselfishness is required. Like as a lazy person, I don't know, or I don't think of a lot of people like every day. But if I'm leading, I kind of they're bumping right into me. I can't help, like,
Right.
It pushes my field of view out.
Yeah. And at the same time, as a good leader, you can't expect what you don't inspect, right? And that one's bitten me in the rear end a few times too. Is just thinking something was done and not actually putting my eyes on it, and like, yes, this is a way above me. The weekend leaders are going to want it, right? Chairs set up and flip charts on the easels and purpose signs set up. Everything straight, square. We want to productions team's purpose is to produce all physical aspects of the weekend so that the men get the best, bang for their buck. And if we're doing a good job, then we're not being noticed, right? Serving invisibly. So.
Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking about like that there's like love in the setting up of name tags, or like, I don't know, because I've heard Carson's talk about, like, you're somebody who cares about men a lot, and maybe he's saying that just because you work hard. I don't know.
Right. Yeah, I care, right? And I don't want to see anybody suffering. And there's a lot of men that are suffering, and it hurts because you find a lot of relief at the weekends, right? And I found a lot of relief at the weekends. I got to work some of my own personal stuff out at the weekends, and I get to sit back as a production member and watch the men, at that moment that it clicks for them and they understand why they're there, and then to see the burdens shake off of them, it's pretty magical.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. The whole vibe of the place is radically. You notice it toward the end of the weekend, or after certain things.
Right. And it sucks when you see a man get to his weekend and then he leaves, right? Because we're going somewhere, right? There's a purpose of everything that leads up to the end of the weekend on Sunday. And it's like, just, you already paid the money. You're already there. Stick it out. Don't leave, right? You're selling yourself short if you leave. And it's like, damn it. And, and DeArmond and Karsten's, it kills all three of us when we see a man leave. We can't figure it out. Why? Right? And it's, that shame and that guilt and that, whatever they got going down deep inside them that's starting to bubble up, and they can't handle it, so they bounce. And it's like, let it bubble up because we're going to get rid of it. At least figure out something to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's deep.
Was we like you and how? I mean, the conversations you three must have, like planning a weekend and whatnot. I mean, that must be pretty deep. I would think. Like,
it is, right? And you know, I'm privileged to be part of this circle, right? Because Mr. DeArmond and Mr. Carstens have been doing this for decades. I have decades to grow before I could even consider myself on that level, right? Something I aspire for, absolutely. But just to be part of the conversation, it's pretty humbling and pretty awesome, right? And I get ahead of myself and I think that I know best. And like when I sit down and get quiet with myself and do my prayer and meditation, I need to just shut the fuck up and listen.
Although I would bet that they would be disappointed if you did shut the fuck up. You know what I mean? Like,
Sometimes. Me and Scott have a couple times I needed to.
I know that, like, yeah, no, they don't necessarily want you to be they don't want us to be, or at least, you know, it's my experience, like a fly on the wall or somebody who just they don't want yes men.
No,
you know what I mean? Yeah.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
It's not that either.
Yeah.
But there's a time to express, you know, my point, and there's a time to follow the chain of command,
Yeah.
right? And it is what it is, and I'm learning, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I make mistakes, and I get out of line, and you know, I get to clean it up.
Yeah. So you've been to all the weekends. There's been 8. Is this going to be the 8th?
This will be the 8th, coming up March 15th. Yeah. So yeah, I've been to every one.
So what's the give me like a favorite, any favorite? I mean, your first was probably most memorable in a way, but anything else, like the way it's changed for you, or
you know
how it's evolved?
I got my favorite parts of every weekend,
Uh-huh.
right? And I have weekends where I felt like I let the men down because of the job that I did as the production team manager or the weekend manager, and it's there's a lot that goes into it. It's a lot during the weekend, and then after a weekend, it takes a couple of weeks to just and we don't talk for a couple weeks after the weekend about the weekend, right? A lot of shit goes on, and it needs to just bubble down and let it die off, because it's a big energy mass, and then it skyrockets, and then it's a big come down, right? And you know, and one thing I'm proud of is I've sponsored a man 2 every weekend, right? And there's several men, I think I'm up to 30, maybe 40, I don't know, men that I've put into the weekends, both weekends. And to watch them go through a weekend and to see the stuff happening for them is it's pretty amazing. And then those men to bring men to the weekend, right? Because I've have a man that I've sponsored that's sponsored now. Mm-hmm. So it's like, that's pretty cool, right? And, you know, to see him come back and join the point programs in the divisions, and to get to be part of, you know, circling up weekly with some of those men, or just seeing them at division meetings, or you know, some of the men I've got to be their point man and take them through the point program, and just, you know, be the DC for them and enrollment manager. And it's a lot. It's cool though.
Yeah. How was your, you know, you mentioned the Sterling Men's Weekend, and a lot of all the, like the point program that you mentioned, and you mentioned Brendan Bird, who was the DC of Quam Men's Division. All that is kind of like a Sterling Men's Weekend. You know, it's attached to the Sterling Men's, like
It's legacy.
The division was created as a division of graduates of the Sterling Men's Weekend, and then
That's right.
and the point program was from the Sterling Men's Division. So a lot of this So the Sterling Men's Weekend started in like 1980 or 79 or something like that, and
81, I believe it was. Women's Weekend.
Women's Weekend 79, and Men's Weekend 81,
Something like that.
Something
Yeah.
like that. Yeah, we would consult textbooks, but they try not to write any of them, and just keep it all oral legacy.
Right.
But yeah, what are some of your thoughts about just having you did the Sterling Men's Weekend shortly after you did?
Sure. Yeah, it was shut down because of COVID and the pandemic, and that's how Man to Men started, right? There was no more Sterling Men's Weekend because it was on hold because of COVID, and according to Carson's, the spirit came to him and was like, men are being warehoused. There's nowhere to send them to get initiated, and it's time. So he called up DeArmond and told him it's time. And that was, I think it was May of 20, something like that. And then June of 21, the weekend was on. And March 22 is when I did my Sterling Men's Weekend, and that was the first weekend after COVID. And most of the men, all the men except for one that I went through the point program with, did the Sterling Men's Weekend with me, right? So we've gone through Man to Men, went through the point program, we're circling up weekly as a team, and we all went to Sterling together. And it was an amazing time, right? And you served on production for my weekend, right? And so did Daher and Mr. Corlett and Mr. Bird and a lot of the men that were part of Quan. And it was something in your life you'll never forget.
And then I guess it gives us something to do in terms of like juggling, like that we have there's 2 weekends going on, and like so you're enrolling. Well, sometimes you have men say, well, what weekend should I go to? And then you're like, well, how much money do you have?
Well, and you talk to different men, they have different opinions, right? And my opinion personally, for me sponsoring men, is up to the man that I'm sponsoring, right? Both weekends are awesome. You're going to get a ton of value out of both, and figuring out where that man is in his life, me being the sponsor and taking responsibility for me leading this man down that path, like it depends on the man.
Yeah.
Right. And, I've talked to men that say you need to go to Man to Men first and then Sterling after. And that was my experience, and it was fabulous. Right. And then there's men like you that Man to Men didn't exist, and Sterling Men's Weekend was first, and then they went and did Man to Men, and it was fantastic. So I don't think there's a right answer. I think the right answer is if you're sponsoring a man, you better take responsibility for that.
Sponsoring, so sponsoring is an interesting word because it means it comes from AA or there's AA sponsorship. It comes from AA, but there's AA sponsorship where somebody takes you through 12 steps, but then sponsoring to a weekend means that person writes on your form, like signs your form, and but what does that mean to you? Like to be like you've talked a little bit about it, but there's responsibility in it, I guess.
There should be.
Yeah.
Right? And it shouldn't be just I got a man. It should be I'm leading a man to a purpose. Right? And what it means to me is I'm going to make sure that man has everything to get to and through his weekends. But, sponsorship also means that, if I hold an event and I'm looking for money, somebody in business will bring money to give to me, and they're sponsoring the event, right? So it's a lot of different kinds of sponsorship. In regards to the men's weekends, if I'm asking a man to trust me and go to his weekend because, there's more confidential. There's nothing confidential about the Man to Men weekend, and that's from the weekend leaders. We'll tell you everything, right? Sterling Men's Weekend is quite the opposite. And really, you do a disjustice if you talk about what happens at the weekends with any man for either weekend, right? And it's like, I asked a man, why would you go to a weekend?
Yeah.
Right? well, I have a hard time with my father. I don't have my kids. I'm going through divorce. I love being around men, right? There's all kinds of reasons. So it's like, not why wouldn't you? Why would you?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Sterling Men's Weekend, $700 plus you got to pay for your food and your lodging. Man to Man Weekend, $500, you get your food and lodging included, but $500 or $700, that's a lot of money, right? And the economy's not the best, and it's a lot to ask somebody to get, trust them and say you're going to get your money's worth. I've at the end of the Man to Men weekends, I've gotten up and said my piece to the men and said, anybody want their money back? And I've done it more than once, and I haven't had somebody say, yeah, I'll take my money back.
Right.
Because I'd give it to them.
Right. Right.
I would absolutely give it to them.
Right. Yeah. So it's kind of so that sponsorship, the trust, like. Well, there's the trust. I guess you're saying this man is ready for the weekend, and then you're also saying you're standing by the weekend. The weekend is ready for the man. Like the man has to trust you about the weekend, but then the weekend leaders are like have to trust you about the men that you bring.
Sure.
So it's like you're trying to. It's almost like a matchmaking, I guess.
It is, right? And and especially new men in recovery, it's probably not the best time.
Right.
And I've made the mistake. I sent a man that was struggling with addiction and in and out, and I haven't had a man that was a newcomer make it through a weekend, right? So I won't do it again because I failed. I failed as a sponsor to know that it was time for that man to go through that initiation, and it hurts. It's not a good feeling.
You mentioned initiation. Were you familiar with, or can you say anything about being initiated as an aspect of the whole thing? There was a little beep over there. That's whatever.
That's all right. Screenaholics for you. What do you expect?
Like and subscribe.
You know what? No, I'm not going to talk about initiation.
Yeah.
It's part of the weekend that I'm not going to rob from
right on
people listening.
It's mysterious.
Sure.
Yeah.
And it's to go through something, right? And to get to the other side.
Yeah.
Right? So you go into something not knowing, and you come out the other side, you're initiated.
Yeah. No,
And I talked to a man that's a Sterling Men's graduate, and told him about the Man to Men weekend. And he's like, I'm already initiated. Why would I do that? It's like, why would you limit yourself to one initiation? If you're growing or deepening yourself, then you should be constantly initiating to the next level. So,
you mentioned it would be kind of a disservice to or disjustice to tell a man anything about, like, even though the Man-to-Man weekend is not confidential, maybe still not the best thing to be running one's mouth about.
no, they're all different.
Yeah.
Right? It's what the men bring to the weekend leaders and the way the directions go.
Yeah.
I can tell you this, I've been to every Man to Men and not one has been the same.
Right.
It's got a different spirit to it. It's got a different flow. It's, we recently added some more columns to the registration form for Man to Men of, is the man married, single, divorced, how many children? And that information gets compiled for the weekend leaders so they know which cards to use. There's a ton of cards that have never been used. Probably never will be, right? Because DeArmond or Carsons get up there and then a man asks a question and then we're going right because that's the way it's going, right? Where we thought we were going this way, this happens, and all of a sudden we're over here. What's important is where we're going at the end, right? And I haven't seen it not go to that spot.
Can you give an example of, like, I'm not letting it, I always, I'm warning that I rush things, so sometimes I don't take things in enough, so I probably miss something. Then I go back and watch it, and then I'm like, oh damn, what could he say?
I wish I would have asked that.
He said that right there. I just missed. Yeah, and but that was neat when you talked about cards. I always and it made me think about the production. Like I know a little bit about what you're talking about. Like a lot of material gets put on cards so the weekend facilitators can sort of be reminded of what to talk, what they're talking about. And then I thought to myself about like how that's different than everyday life, right? Like
Sure.
in everyday life, you're not usually reading off of
Nobody's
cards.
feeding you the card.
But then and that made me think like, well, is that what's going on? Can you talk a little bit about like how much this stuff can affect everyday life, or like, we're talking about the weekends, but like, what's your everyday life like, and how's and is the weekend related to it?
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Right. And my everyday life is full and busy and great. And, I got a 10-month-old at home, right? I'm married, and we just bought our house a few months ago, and we both work full-time jobs, and we got this little one at home now. And, there's 15 tenets that I got from doing my man-to-man weekend and the Sterling Men's weekend that I try to live my life by. It's code of honor, right? And if I'm living that code of honor, then I'm living my men's weekend. And if I'm not, then I'm failing, right? Because I've been given the tool of being the best man I can be, right? That way I can take care of my child and my wife and my community and my friends, right? Be the best employee I can be. And, absolutely I think about my weekend and how the technology that I've received at my weekends of, it becomes part of the everyday living, right? Problem, no problem, situations, never again will I have a problem, that kind of stuff. It just gets ingrained after you live it. And I'm not saying that I live the perfect weekend and I'm the man I always wanted to be, and I got a lot of work to do. But the work that I've done over the last few years, absolutely I see a difference.
What do you do for a living?
So what I do for a living is I grew up working for my grandpa, doing electrical work, right? And worked in the field for a few years. And then I got moved inside the warehouse, electrical warehouse. And then I got moved inside the office and took over for purchasing and dispatch and project management. And then, I was with my grandpa for a long time. And then I moved to an electrical distributor and moved to outside sales. So I was selling electrical products. And then November 1st of 2021, a few months after my weekend, I got a call from my current employer, and the lady's position that I took said, "Hey, my boss wants to hire you." And I was like, "I'm happy." I was at the distributor. Life was good. I was making good money, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, "I'm good." And then she called me back and she told me, he just wants to have a conversation with you. What's it going to hurt? So I called my current boss, Mike, and talked to Mike, and he asked me if I'd be willing to come in and do an interview. Interview with him. And it's for Cal Lighting. And what Cal Lighting does is just lighting and lighting controls. And I think we represent 124 different lighting companies, and we're their representatives. So I cover the North Bay, so north of San Francisco, all the way up to Crescent City, a little bit in Napa and Solano County as well, but everything in Sonoma, Marin, Mendocino, all the way up to Humboldt, that's all my territory. And, I am a manufacturer rep for lighting and lighting controls, and I sell that stuff. So.
Wait, sorry, did you say the East Bay at all, or did you just
No, not East Bay. Not my territory.
You have an office over there or something?
Cal Lighting's office is in San Ramon. So
Copy that.
on Tuesdays we'll have project meetings, and that's why I'll be down there.
Okay.
When I first got hired, the lady that I took over for, she lived in Oakland, so she had a few customers that were in the East Bay that originally I had over there, but it didn't make sense for me to drive to the East Bay for one or two customers when I have 70 customers on this neck of the woods.
What would you say, like, so in your work, I guess maybe breaking it down, I hear you about, the men's weekend you have a code of honor and you're living by, and that's connecting to. But
Sure.
can you like break down like how it might be, how men's weekend might affect you in like your work, your personal life, your relationships with your parents? I don't know, stuff like that.
Sure. Let me think about that for a sec. So for work, right? A problem,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Will get presented. Light fixture got damaged in shipping. Something's getting delayed. Just whatever's coming at you. There's always bullshit coming at you, right?
Yeah.
And if I'm living my men's weekend, then it's just a situation. And okay, so it got damaged. Let's make sure that the trucking company and the paperwork gets filed and we're taking care of it. Oh, we can't use this fixture because it's going to take 16 weeks. Okay, let's find something else that's going to work, right? And hopefully something's going to save the customer a little bit of money, make us a little bit more, save them a little bit more. Everybody wins, right? And that's what I love about my work is it's always different, right? No 2 days at my work are the same. I wake up, first thing I do is check the emails, see what's going on. A lot of times, like next week, I know I got appointments Monday in Santa Rosa. Tuesday morning, I'm going to Napa. In the afternoon, I'm going to Santa Rafael. Wednesday, or not Santa Rafael, Santa Ramon. Wednesday, I'll be in the Santa Rafael area. And we got our Q1 promo for Cooper Lighting going on. And, I want to have the most promo sales, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm competitive. And I don't want my coworkers that have different territories to not have promo sales, but
Right.
I want to be the best, right? And again, I'm working with people that have been there 20, 25 years, and here I am 2 years in. I'm not going to be the best yet. I have something to work towards, but I definitely give a shit, right? And, it's just there's different aspects of the weekend that show up in your everyday life, and not overreacting and knowing the difference between being emotional and being sensitive, right? Because I'm a pretty emotional guy and it doesn't work to my favor. But if I'm being sensitive, then I'm listening better, I'm hearing better, I'm taking the time to figure out, okay, what's the best way to handle this, right? So difference between emotional and sensitive, right? So all technology from the weekend.
How about at home?
They're all crazy at home, Why do you think I need my men? No, it's I don't know, Dittmer. It all just kind of
I figured there would be quite a bit that you're using though. I mean, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And being a good listener,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I'm not good at that stuff. Knowing I don't want to talk too much about it because I don't want to blow any confidentialities. But
Yeah.
there's
okay,
like
so
six. There's
Sterling Weekend tools maybe are helping there.
yeah, for sure.
Which are confidential.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And knowing those and why those exist and stuff like that. We talked about it a couple months ago, right? Like, hey, what are those? Whatever
what's
they
that
are.
one? Yeah.
And it's like, okay, 1 is this, 2 is this. Blah blah blah. And it's good stuff to know, and because it comes fast and hard at the Sterling Men's Weekend, right? And to try to retain all of that it's a lot. But if you're living with your men and circling up, there's a way to bring the technology without breaking the confidentiality of the weekends.
Yeah, and I mean, and I've heard I think Karsten say like the man-to-man weekend is more for a man. It's about men, and the Sterling Men's Weekend is more about relationships. And so that might be why that.
Yeah, what's that Karsten says? The man-to-men weekend, we're going to talk about things that are important to men that men talk about.
The way men talk about things that are important to them.
There it is. And they also, Karsten's and DeArmond say, we're not going to tell you anything that you don't already know. You just might have forgotten.
Right.
And, I've come to find that true. It's like,
Well, there's a real effort, it seems like, to make sure, like, to take into account all the men's experiences and to get some, get everybody, like, we're all on the same page. Let's make sure we're all on the same page. Yeah.
yeah, and having a well, how about how is it being a father so far?
Oh, it's a dream come true, man. I've always wanted kids, right? And my shortly after my June 21 weekend, my my wife lost a baby, right? And that hurt pretty bad. And I remember my wife asking me why it didn't bother me, right? And it still bothers me,
Yeah.
right? But it was because I had the men that I was able to stay steadfast for my wife, right? And then we struggled for a while to get pregnant again, and for her to get pregnant again, and then I she told me she was pregnant, and I shielded myself for a few months of like,
Oh yeah,
that was great,
Yeah.
And then March 6th, he was born, 8:21 in the morning. Here's a funny one. So 8:21, right? And the kid was born. Little sucker stayed breech. We tried to do the aversion thing and watching my wife's stomach get wrenched on to flip him around. It didn't work. It was horrible. What did I do? I stayed steady. I walked outside. I called one of my men. I broke down. I sucked it up, moved on, walked it off, went back in there, stayed good for my wife, right? So it's like all these situations in my life that are coming up that are I go to my men, right? So I could be strong for my wife. And anyways, so 8:21, little Justin comes out, C-section, and I got my watch on. That's set to navel time, which is to the second. And I looked at my clock, and one of the clocks in the room said 8:23, and another one said 8:19, and then the computer said 8:21 or something like that. They were all different. So they're talking about, what time he was born, and, it was 8:23. I said, no. It was 8:21. And the nurse is like, well, it doesn't matter. And I was like, oh, no, it matters. Because if you're 1 second late, you're late, And that definitely came from the men's weekend. And, being impeccable, and
Yeah.
so on his birth certificate, it came from my watch, and it was actually a watch that I had borrowed from Mr. Kevin Harrington, right? And his watch, I didn't even have to question it. It was set to that naval time, and I ended up giving Harrington's watch back, and I told him that's a special watch. That's the watch that my son's birth time is recorded from, and just being there and helping my wife. Recovery from her C-section surgery, which is crazy. They cut through the gut and all the muscles, and it's, blah, blah, blah. But like being prepared, right? Before that, I knew she was having a C-section, so I went out and bought her a bed for the downstairs because I didn't want her climbing up the stairs. So like there's another aspect of a weekend, being prepared, right? And just, helping her heal and watching the baby, and, little Justin is now crawling around, and he's starting to stand up, and he's laughing, and he's got his own personality, and it's just such a joy. He has his own nursery and his own crib, but 5:30 in the morning, he usually wakes up and he'll come into bed with us. And like the best part of my morning is that little guy like shaking me. And it's funny, I'll go on these out of town trips with the men or whatever's going on. And like my wife will tell me, baby's looking for you, like, where you at? And we'll FaceTime and all that stuff. So, it's amazing being a father, and it changes everything, right? And knowing that it's kind of like sponsorship. I'm responsible for this little life now, right? And it's my job as a father to help that young man become a man that has integrity and morals and principles, and hopefully a connection with spiritual, and like it's my job with my wife to make sure that happens, right? And then for him to break off and go do his own thing, and all that. And it's said in the Man-to-Man from the first weekend and in the video, a father's job is to raise a child so he leaves us, right? And how painful is that? It's like, I don't know.
Oh, yeah, the video,
I know I
yeah.
got like at least 18 years before I had to figure that one out, but it's like it's a blessing to be a father, right? And it's been a journey to get there.
That's interesting how the responsibility comes up again, like we said about being a sponsor, because that being one of the 4 pillars that's used. And then I'm just thinking about like how. I mean, I don't know. Is it surprising to you, looking like, if you could have guessed like where you'd be 10 years ago, like that you'd ever be part of a enthusiastic member of an organization that's sort of like trying to convince other men of the importance of responsibility and taking responsibility? Like, could you ever imagine that or guess that would be, you know what I mean, like in the cards for you?
Yes and no. Right? Before I got into my addictions and I got lost.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I was, part of Little League Baseball for Marquest Little League, and I coached my brother's team, and I was a junior umpire, and then I became, in charge of the junior umpires, and then I got onto the board for Marquest Little League as the umpire in chief. And,
oh, no shit.
And you know what I mean? And like,
you were into
so,
umpiring.
Yeah. So I've always, joined groups and then figured out how to get to the top and like bring people around, right? So yes, is the answer to the question. I did see myself there, and yes, I got lost in alcoholism and drug addiction, and it took me getting sober to get back to where I am. 10 years ago, if you would have asked me that I was a weekend manager and all this other stuff that
What's
I got,
a weekend? Yeah.
you know what I mean? No.
No, yeah.
But does it surprise me that I'm part of organizations that have a lot of people that are doing, charitable work and that kind of stuff? Nah, not really. That's me.
Right.
You know what I mean? I enjoy helping people.
Yeah. I guess I mean, I think that I can relate to being, getting sidetracked by drugs and alcohol, but I don't know, for me, and tell me if this is just me or if you can relate also, like, I think I got sidetracked by like just the whole notion of being cool, be a slacker, and, cool kids don't, try that hard. And like, I don't know, like there's I feel like the culture still is like, if we don't, I mean, there is something like unusual about people just being like, "Oh yeah, you need to take responsibility." Like, you don't start too many conversations like that.
No. Right? What the hell is this guy talking about? But if you're living the life, then people see it, right? If they know who you are.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's right.
If you want what I got,
that's
then
right.
do what I do.
That's right.
And that goes back to like attraction rather than promotion. Where the men's weekend, there's a lot about promotion, right? And I think that a lot of men get stirred away because a lot of sponsors stick to too much promotion and not enough attraction. So there's a balance there, right?
Yeah. Right. We don't have attraction rather than promotion as a 12-step precept.
Sure.
We can promote we can promote the weekends, but in other words, be careful, tread lightly.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't turn it into a sales pitch.
Right.
Yeah, that's not what we're doing.
Because maybe it's like the excess of promotions that have made so many people cynical over, or that's why being cool is out there, just because you've got to almost be cool in the midst of being sold. Everywhere you turn around, you're going to be sold something.
And my opinion is it has nothing to do with being cool and just being able to be trustworthy, right? Do the men trust me? Yeah,
that's interesting.
And I think that's why, I've had men where I had to ask and ask and ask. I've had men sign up and then not go. I've had men, leave the weekend. I've had men that have told me flat out no. And I've had men that say, absolutely, why haven't you asked me sooner? Right? So it's all kinds of different responses and stuff, but you definitely get more no's than yeses.
Yeah. That's it's like you said. It's a big commitment for people to make. But
Sure.
but I don't know. Yeah, yeah. One does have to be able to take no for an answer in order to get to yes.
Right. And, bringing it back to weekend technology is like, accept the no.
Yeah.
Don't accept that, I don't know, maybe, blah,
Yeah,
blah, blah.
yeah.
Like, help support the man to be clear. No gray area. It's
Uh-huh.
black or white question. Yes, I want to go. No, I don't.
Uh-huh.
Right? And I hate living in the gray area. I'm a very black and white person. It's either yes or it's no. And the middle is just bullshit to me.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And that's just me.
Yeah.
A lot of other people are like, nah, there's a lot of gray in a lot of things. And I'm like, maybe for you. For me, it's simple. Yes, no.
And that was like I feel like the first man-to-man weekend, and I don't know how much still, but it's probably, I know that we still talk about the bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
That's still a big part of the weekend.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we've actually increased how much we talk about it.
Okay.
Right. And the men talk about what their bullshit is with other men, and, just kind of get all the bullshit flowing so we can get rid of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So like, in other words, even if you're decisive and a black and white person, for you it's black and white, the amount of indecisiveness, like, it could accumulate up like amongst us, or
Sure.
like just be a living thing that's just all around us sometimes.
Right.
Yeah.
The bullshit, the burdens, all kinds of stuff that men have to carry.
Right.
Right. And I know DeArmond talked about like the armor that men wear, and like when you could take the armor off and that kind of stuff. Right. And
Shining armor.
exactly.
Yeah, no, and I wonder, I wonder if it's funny, I'm sidetracked for a minute, but I don't know if there's a good question around it about like what does being cool have to do with anything, or where that's coming from for me. It's not really any weekend technology. That's why I'm kind of like pausing, like whether there's even a question there.
It's the bullshit.
It's bullshit.
It's
Yeah,
bullshit.
Yeah. You know what it probably is it's like beer commercials. No, it's not just beer commercials, but that might be the epitome of it. It's like I saw some beer commercials that I thought like, oh, that's what life is supposed to be like, and it's like, no, it's just
bullshit.
You're just selling beer. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, man, I wanna take more of your time, but I don't know how much. Let's stop here, and if we have a second segment, we'll pick it up. But
Sounds good to me.
in case we don't have a second segment, dude, thanks for your time.
Yeah.
It's great to have you guys from the Man Weekend come talk about the weekend. And I like a lot of things you said about how men should go. So March 15th to 17th.
Yeah. And March 1st through 3rd.
It's
the Sterling Men's Weekend,
mm-hmm.
right?
Yep.
The March to March. Right? So, my hope is, men out here will hear this interview, come circle up with us. There's different men's teams that meet weekly, Sonoma County, Sacramento, all over the place. There's different community service things we're doing. Let's take a break. There's more to talk about, though.
Okay, cool.
All right.
Damn it. Quan Men's Division.
Chun.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it's been going on since 2014, about, and yeah, DeArmond came by, and the circle where this men's team I was at with a couple other men named Dan Williams and Nick DeMakis to tell us about a men's course. But that was when I first met DeArmond. But at the same time, Steven Smolowitz, who was on my team, he joined this other team as well. This other team that was like invite only or something like that. But I heard more about it when I took that men's course. A lot of the men in the men's course were in this new Quan men's thing, and I showed up to a couple meetings, and I joined. And at that time, and shortly after, they split into two teams, of which and then around that same DeArmond joined also.
Nice.
So that was 2015. but yeah. So what's it been for you?
What it's been for me is a lot of fun.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, a lot of time, a lot of headache, and a lot of heartbreak too. Um, the, the best part about Quan is the community service, right? And just sending men to the men's weekend, that is community service, right? Building a community of men to serve is it starts out with community service, and we just got through Christmas, and the current division coordinator, Mr. Lehow, had a vision of helping kids that weren't going to be able to have Christmas without some help. And the men of Quan, went out and packed 2 cars full of toys, and it was great. We met at a location and separated all the toys by age, and some of the men's kids were there, and Santa Claus got to show up, and
I was about to say that I understand that you were Santa Claus.
no, Santa Claus came. He's real, and the best part was like the men. Mr. Awad brought his daughter.
Yeah.
Right. And Mr. Lehow brought his kids, and they were understanding that the toys weren't for them and that they were for kids that needed them, and that they got to be part of separating them out. Right. And that's good fathers right there. And, there's a lot of kids that got touched by what we did. And not in a weird way either. You know what I mean? But it's awesome. We've also went and got a bunch of socks and walked around downtown Santa Rosa, and
not the same Christmas, but
no,
previous Christmas.
Christmas,
Yeah.
it was wet out, a lot of homeless, and all we did is went up and offered them a pair of socks. Hey, you need some socks, right? We also walked around with Little Caesars pizzas and fed some guys and women, and just being part of the community and making it better. The other night we were on a call, the core team call for the division, and we were talking about what's next for community service, and the idea of going to a beach and circling up with as many men as we can, and everybody taking whatever amount of time and just going and cleaning up a beach and turning it into an enrollment event for the weekends, or just the different things we do for the division. It's awesome to serve the community.
Yeah.
And I've been on my team since my point program, right? And it's not the same team, and I'm going to bring it up at my next team meeting because I'm the only one left from the point program. All the other men have, moved away or quit.
Uh-huh.
And some of them are doing okay. Some of them are in jail. One of them's over in Ukraine, fighting. Mr. Edmonds is over there fighting in Ukraine right now, and he's a badass Marine, and he went back to it. And my Turner, it's different, right? But I'm still serving, and I've got to move up in the ranks of Quan and got to serve just as a member of a team, and then got onto the core team. Like we were just talking about a few minutes ago off camera, you were the enrollment manager, and then I took over for a quick second, and then all of a sudden the division was out without a division coordinator, and I stepped up into that position and held it until I completed in this last cycle. And, I thought that I was done serving on the core team, and Mr. Lehow, who took over for me, called me up and asked me if I would be part of the core team again as the enrollment manager. So that's what I'm doing now is, I made it clear with Lehow that I'll serve for 3 cycles, and a cycle is from weekend to weekend. Mm-hmm. And then I would train a replacement, and I'd be completed with the enrollment manager job, and that's if I make it. Right? We set up some results for me to hit. We want to put 30 men into the man-to-men weekend in March and 30 men into the Sterling men's weekend, and that's a feat. Right? We're down to 20-something members, so we got a lot of work to do to get men registered for their men's weekends. Right? And I take it real serious, and it's not that hard. It's just talking to men,
Mm-hmm.
right? We joked the other night on the call. Helios, which is the team you're on, is having a team meeting this coming Monday,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, on the enrollment call, your guys' enrollment rep said we got 12 guests coming. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. So I talked about it on the core team call, and you called me out. You're like, hey, Cimino, you can come too if you bring a guest. So I'm like, all right, that's a challenge. So I've been calling men that I'm trying to bring a guest so I could be part of this thing, right? Because when you circle up and there's 12 men that don't know what's going on and think, and all of a sudden them saying yes to the weekend, however that is, and that energy to be part of, I've been part of a meeting where 6 men registered one night, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was amazing because we had one guy saying that, no, and then boom, 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 boom. And then all of a sudden he was going to the weekend. And all of them went to this last man-to-men weekend. It was, it was incredible.
Yeah, there's something about something infectious about just being excited about, and it's like men finding their place among the men. I think
Sure.
that's maybe what's happening. I don't, but I mean, it's a challenge, but it's also like it's my. I'm not being slimy in that regard, in that like I'm not saying, hey, Cimino, be my guest so I can have a guest, because what good is that? Then I'm not sharing the weekend with somebody new. I'm just getting another body who's done both weekends. So getting you to a meeting is not right. But people, and then I've got then I'll claim you as a guest if you have a guest.
Absolutely.
Right.
Right.
Right. But I've seen things where that just a little, like Alan Hill used to always say, like, well, hey, $20, who's going to register? Everybody on the team put in $20 for whoever's going to register a man first. So it's this competitive thing about registration, but and it's funny because then people, as you say, if we promote too much, people think like, well, what are you getting, steak knives or something?
Yeah.
But of course we're not.
It's a toaster.
But we want to get we just want to win.
Yeah. No, to share the gift of the weekend is what it's all about.
Yeah.
And it's hard to explain what that is until you've gone through it.
Yeah.
I think one of my favorite events was a division meeting, and me and Karstens had a bet about how many guests we were going to get there. It was a registration event, an open house, and so Karstens and I made a bet, and if I won, Karstens had to put on a tutu and get in the middle of the men and sing "I'm a Little Teapot" in a tutu. And if he won, you're just talking about Alan Hill. He was part of the division at the time. I was going to have to go out into the circle, get on my knees, have Hill take his shoes off and kiss his feet and tell him that he's the grand poopah. I sure as hell wasn't kissing Hill's feet, so damn right I beat Karstens.
The grand poobah. Yeah. That's
And Karstens looks good in a pink tutu. That might be breaking confidentiality, but I'll do some push-ups about it and I'll be cleaned up. It's about having fun, right?
Yes.
And we talk about that it being a secondary purpose, right? And if you're not having fun and you're not getting value, then it's not the right spot for you, right? But if you're bringing value, you're having fun, and you're aiming to the top for that purpose, then good things happen in people's lives, right? And just for me, since I did my man-to-man weekend, I got married. I had a kid. I've gotten, I doubled up on a job where I'm making twice what I used to make. And, I bought a beautiful 4-bedroom house, and like the material things don't mean shit. I mean, it's nice, but like the way I view myself and carry myself because of the weekends, that's where the value is. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That it's not even like whether people go to the weekend or not isn't even like, I like just having a reason to call people, even and then an enrollment call could just be like, oh, I know this man's not really ready to go to the weekend, but I'm gonna stay in his, I don't know. It's sort of this whole idea of purpose driven. It's purpose driven.
Yeah.
There's like the purpose of the weekends leads to all this activity, and I guess I'm used to, going back to being cool. Being cool, you're just hanging out, like, so that's that's what we get away from, like, hopefully.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I also like that you said that it is community service, just getting men to the weekends. Like,
Absolutely.
like there's a like it's nice that we come up with some other community service projects, but it's almost like we don't need to. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, well, we could do a little of this or a little bit of that, but like but what we're doing is like, there's a singleness of purpose. Like, you want to help men. So, I don't know, like, I think that stuff can be enrolling because people like community service,
Right.
But at the same time, I don't want it to be a distraction from our purpose.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, and there's a fine line, and it's hard to stay on point.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's something awesome about Christmas Eve. I got a phone call, and it was from a man that I met that circles up down in Southern California. And I went down there for team leadership training, and I met the man and talked to him about the Man-to-Men weekend. He's a Sterling Men's graduate. Anyway, so get a call from him on Christmas Eve, and we don't talk really, but he was calling saying, Cimino, how you doing? Merry Christmas. How's life? Told him about my son. He told me what he was going through. And I'm like, what are you doing for Christmas? And he's like, well, mom and dad are separated now, so I might go to mom's, might go to dad's. I'm like, well, is it might go to mom's, might go to dad's, or what are you going to do? And he's like, thank you. He goes, I'm going to both. And he's like, I just made a decision, right? And it's like, get out of the gray area and get black and white. I'm going to mom's, I'm going to dad's, I'm going to both. And like, it clicked for him on the phone call. He's like, I'm doing both. Thanks a lot. And then I asked him, how is the Kaizen dojo doing? And he's like, Kaizen's doing good. And, and I asked him, if he's talking to men about sending them to the weekends, and told him that we had the Man-to-Men weekend coming up. Just part of a conversation, right? And he's like, when I met him, I showed him the video about Man-to-Men and told him it'd be great to have him. And other men from Southern California have been up for the weekend. And on the phone call, wasn't expecting it. He called me, talked about Man-to-Men, and all of a sudden, I'm a fuck it, which means I'm going, right? And by February 1st, this man's going to be registered to go to the next Man-to-Men weekend. And that's a result of just reaching out, letting men know how you're doing, and just having that conversation, right? Like, have a reason to call. That man probably didn't call me to say yes, he was going to a weekend, but because I answered the phone and we talked and I just brought it up, he was like, yeah, absolutely, I want to go do that. Mm-hmm. And I think that goes back to trust.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, building trust amongst the men in your life. Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. And I know there's a lot of good men down there. And Kaizen is a men's division dojo. In Southern California. There's something about the word dojo, it means something or it has some history. Whatever. Yeah, the other thing that reminds me of about, just talking about enrollment and just having fun when you're doing it, is that, we were talking about the bullshit earlier, and the bullshit confuses men about it. It's like, oh, enrollment, and it becomes you talk about enrollment sometimes without having fun, and it becomes like this weird, crazy thing, enrollment. It's like just the word enrollment, actually, out of context or in the wrong context, it sounds like take out the papers and pens or something like that.
Yeah,
we have to, I don't know.
And it can be, right? If it's not led right, what's your active count? Blah, 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 blah.
Uh-huh.
And it's like, yeah, that stuff's important, but there's a way to bring it, right?
Uh-huh.
And, it's important to have fun, because if it's not fun and it's not bringing value, why would you do it?
Yeah. And they're bringing value, right? Just as much a part of it. So it's fun, and then also I remember that in 12-step rooms, just being, some people they share, and this morning my wife yelled at me and whatever, or just boring, kind of like run-of-the-mill stuff. And then some people said I know people, people's lives are at stake. You know what I mean? Like there's sort of like this deadly seriousness that comes in, which doesn't come naturally to me to start getting really serious with people. But I think I can see it. I mean, you have a gift there in terms of like you have the dimension of like, okay, I've experienced some pain. I know where some of this stuff can go off the rails. I know how important this is to get to men.
Yeah, yeah. And there's a time to have fun. There's time to be serious, and absolutely, men's lives are at risk, right? And if the men's lives are at risk, then their spouses are at risk, their children are at risk, their parents are at risk, their employers are at risk, and it's like it's a spiral effect, right? And being able to enroll someone and being able to just be part of their lives and just to help a little bit, it's worth it to me, right? Because being part of the division and being part of the weekends and all that stuff, it's a lot of time away from my family at home, right? And it's a sacrifice for sure, right? Because if I'm at a team meeting 3 hours a week, and then I'm doing a core team call, and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. It's like all those hours and seconds away from my son and my wife. It sucks. It does.
Yeah.
But if it saves a man's life, how much does it suck? My wife's okay.
Yeah.
Right? Better than okay. My son's in good care.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that I'm not responsible for being part of that care, but if men like you and I aren't helping save men, then what about their sons? What about them? Right? So it's part of, you brought up the 4 pillars, right? And sacrifice is one of them. So and it's like men's lives are at stake. Like the idea that men are in trouble is like, we're not like trying to make up some new thing or whatever. We're just talking about, I don't know what instead of me trying to put words in your mouth, how would you contextualize that? Like, what is the trouble that, like, when we say men's lives are in the balance, you're talking about? I'm talking about men that are isolating. I'm talking about men that are going through divorce. I'm talking about new husbands. I'm talking about young men that are pretending to be married. I'm talking about men that are not honest with themselves, that can't stand themselves. I'm talking about men that are actually doing good in their lives and are upstairs and have no problems, right? I'm talking about all the men, right? And I'm talking about, what was the suicide?
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
I don't have the card in front of me, and I forget the exact figures, but it's like a man kills himself every second. So that's 60 men per minute. And that's, I don't know the numbers off my top of my head, but multiply it. 1 every second. So, it's 60 an hour, or 60 a minute, times 60, Mr. Mathman, right? Times 7 days a week, times a month, times a year. It's like it gets up to like 500,000 men kill themselves a year or something like that.
That would be. I mean, I'll look it up and link it to let's get the stat, so we'll have it.
And I have it written down at home.
Yeah. I figured. Yeah.
And and how about young men? Right. Let's talk about the young men for a second. In all 50 states, young women, girls, are half a grade or higher above the young men.
Mm-hmm.
The jails, it's 70% more likely for a young woman age of 30 to own her own home versus a man. It's crazy to me. Here's one. I mentioned I just bought my house in August, and my in-laws told me that it's important that I look into life insurance. So I called 36-year-old man. My wife's the same age. I called and got a quote, $1 million policy. My wife, $40 a month. What would you expect mine as a man to be?
60.
Yeah. No, 240.
Really?
6 times. 6 times more expensive for a man, 36 year age, no health problems, no medical exam for either man or woman. 6 times for a man for health insurance. You know, that's a crazy fact to me.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like
Life insurance.
life insurance. You know, and I don't know why that is or whatnot, and I don't even want to begin to speculate, but it's like, how is it 6 times more expensive for a man? And I could get into it, but it'd probably piss some people off, and I don't want to go there.
And it's right, and it's not like I was hearing this. I was listening to some video this morning about like the director of the next Star Wars movie is going to be a woman and blah blah blah. But like and the guy said he talked about just arguments where it's like somebody from this ethnic group should do this by year this or whatever. It's like we don't care, or at least it's not that we like men should have equal. It's not about so much equal like we want. It's not so much like we care about our ethnic group being represented, but it's more like this gender is like, well, I'll tell why focus on one gender? Like why?
I'm not a woman.
Yeah.
I don't understand women.
Yeah.
I don't even want to begin to try to understand women. And the women need to take care of the women.
Yeah.
That's my stance.
Yeah.
And the men need to take care of the men.
Yeah.
Now, that's not to say that my wife doesn't take care of me and I don't take care of my wife.
Yeah.
But, you know, it would be the exact opposite if I brought what I bring to my men to my wife. In fact, it wouldn't be pretty.
Yeah.
Right? I could come to my men and bring the deep, ugly facts of life to my men, where if I would bring that to my wife or my mother or my sister, it just...
Yeah.
It's not okay.
Yeah. So it's kind of like there's a healing that can take place with at a men's weekend, and one would think at a women's weekend also, but
Sure.
But we're just talking about what our experience is, and maybe the only reason we might compare men and women like this versus that is because so often we might get the question like, well, why do you have to, what do men need anything or whatever? And it's like, well, we're all human beings.
Sure.
And so there's like and we can help each other. It seems like there's the type of help we can give each other is kind of, I don't know. What I've been saying lately is like, I think I like to be around men. I'd like to be around one woman. I'd like to be around a woman. You know what I mean? I mean, not that I can't work with women, but like, I think that I could care for one woman. You know what I mean? I'm not going to go out and like care for women. Like, oh, I'm going to help women in mass. Like, I don't know how.
Yeah. Nope.
Yeah.
It's not my calling. It's not my forte.
Yeah. I mean,
Right?
yeah, there may be men who could.
Yeah, sure. There's Sterling leads the women's weekend. You know? I don't know what that looks like.
Right.
I know that I did my men's weekend March 22, and I came home and I told my wife about the women's weekend in August of 22, and Mrs. DeArmond registered my wife to that weekend, right? And I think it goes back to trust, right? The trust that we have for the DeArmonds, both Vicky and Mitch, right? And me telling my wife, hey, this is happening, and the trust that she has in me as her husband, and whatever else role that brings, father of her child, right? Life partner, blah, blah, blah. And, it's not blah, 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 but the connection we have with each other, it was no question for her of, I ain't going to that weekend. I ain't going to listen to some man. You know what I mean? It was just absolutely.
Yeah.
And, we don't really talk about what happened at either of our weekends, right? We just kind of live it. And it's a noticeable change in both of us from doing our weekends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
And I wish that the whatever. I'm going to stay out of the wishes for the women. The women can take care of the women.
right. Well, like they could have a woman to woman weekend if but yeah, they'd have to. Yeah, that's not really. Or they could not. Yeah, whatever.
I don't know.
I remember, but I remember thinking that at the first Man to Man weekend because I just done production on the women's weekend for the first time, and that doesn't mean I was inside the room. I wasn't. We don't. But so I don't know exactly how it works when Justin's in there with them. But I had that sense of like wow, it's cool that we have that. It's it means that we're not in some kind of exclusive community. We're part of something that's trying to help everybody. And
Sure.
Yeah.
And my men's team put on a dinner for all the women, and we were at a spot where there was a kitchen and it was closed off, and then it was a meeting room, and we set up tables with tablecloths and set it real nice, and all the men had a part, right? But there were servers, and they dressed in button-up shirts and ties and slacks, and they were the only ones that went out there, right? And they brought the women their meals, and the rest of us men, prepared the food and got everything ready, and we stayed out of the way. And just to sit back and listen to the women once they got together was pretty awesome, because a result that happened that wasn't on our CPR, or I should say DeArmond's CPR, because he led the event, was all the women took each other's phone numbers down and created a circle of their own, right? And that's the women doing women things. And it was cool just to be a part of being able to serve for them and to just stay out of the way and stay in the background, and I made a charcuterie board, and I was like, what I mean? That's not me. That's Amber. Amber makes the cool charcuterie boards, but I know she likes them. So I was like, I'll make a charcuterie board, and I can't make a rose out of the salami or anything like that. But I took the love and the care to make it look as best as I can. I knew that there was going to be a vegetarian in there, so I made a separate charcuterie board and separated them, so there was no meat on the board for the vegetarian, and just little things like that. That's how the men should be taking care of the women, in my opinion, is serve them, stay out of their way.
Nice.
They're much more intellectual, smarter. They're playing chess, and I can barely play checkers.
And they're but yeah, we that's it's good to sort of get to appreciate. That sounds like an awesome event.
It was fun.
Yeah, that's I don't know.
It was a good time.
Why I haven't been on a team that did that, so I gotta get with it.
That's because you're not on our team. You're on the other team.
The other thing that's been really good about this interview is that I think it answers the question that so many people ask me, well, what do you guys do all the time? You know what I mean? So it's cool. It's nice that we've been able to talk about some of the just to come back and talk about Quan is
community service. It's what we do.
Yeah, right. Without having to do a community service project, but we do sometimes do those.
And we have fun.
Yeah.
And we take care of each other.
Yep.
Right? And I have a circle of men because of Quan Men's Division, where we lost someone a couple weeks ago to cancer, and my phone was blowing up. You okay? Can I do anything for you? Can I come take out the garbage for you? Do you need your dog poop picked up? And I don't take help, and that's a flaw for me.
Yeah.
But for my phone and to get those messages, it's like, that's pretty cool, because a lot of men don't have that, right? And there's no situation that I could that I will ever go through alone.
Yeah.
So it means a lot.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, man. Do you want to say anything about your loss or
fuck cancer?
Fuck cancer.
It was hard to watch Glenn Gephardt go through his pancreatic cancer and to watch him wither away. And I got to be a service to him. He got diagnosed in either the end of March or beginning of April, and he passed away on the 27th of December. And he was having a hard time eating, and I barbecued a tri-tip, right? So last 8 months or whatever it's been, 9 months, I was barbecuing tri-tips for Glenn. And, about a month ago was the last time I barbecued one for Glenn. And he wasn't eating and he was struggling. And I my wife got a phone call from Roseanne, and Glenn wanted some tri-tip, and it was raining, right? So I went over there, and I barbecued in the rain and got to serve him food, and that was really the last time I got to see Glenn, other than one other time. And then when he passed away, I got to go over there with my wife and say our goodbyes and just be a part of that. And his daughter from Pennsylvania was in town, and she asked if I'd come over and cook tri-tip.
Is your mom's brother?
No, so this is
Do you
Amber,
affectionately call him your uncle, or no?
Amber's side. It's not
Okay.
even my side,
Oh, got it.
right? And they're adopted parents to Amber, really.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? She calls them her aunt and her uncle.
Yeah.
It's like Roseanne and Glenn were second parents to Amber.
Yeah.
And Glenn was our realtor for our house, and taught Amber how to dance, and taught Amber a lot of stuff, and encouraged Amber to go to college. And he was a very important man in Amber's life. So I'm glad I got to meet him and be part of his life for the last, I think it was 7 years or something like that, and just to be of service to him, man.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's just I don't know, another a lot of men in your life, huh? So
Absolutely.
yeah,
Super blessed.
yeah, man.
Right.
Well, hey, I hope you think of me as one of them. I really appreciate your time here.
Absolutely, Dittmer.
And hopefully, we got to get this. Man to Men podcast number 5 in the books. Mr. Justin Cimino, weekend manager, and let's March 15th to 17th. Come on out and see us there.
Thank you.
Right on, man.